Welcome to Dreamweaver Tales. Get comfortable, close your eyes, and let my voice guide you into a world of peaceful dreams. The water itself is extraordinary, so clear and still that it creates an almost perfect mirror of the world above. The mountains on either side of the fjord plunge directly down into these dark depths, their reflections creating the illusion that we're suspended between two identical worlds, one reaching up toward the heavens and another reaching down into mysterious depths. The surface is so calm that even the smallest details are reflected with crystalline clarity. The texture of rock faces, the delicate branches of birch trees clinging to impossible cliffside perches, the subtle gradations of color in the evening sky. Standing here at the water's edge, you become acutely aware of the profound silence that exists in places like this. It's not the absence of sound, but rather the presence of sounds, so subtle and natural, they seem to emerge from the landscape itself. The gentle lap of water against stone creates the faintest rhythmic whisper. Somewhere high above, a bird calls once, a clear, pure note that echoes briefly between the mountain walls before fading into the vastness. The wind moves differently here, channeled by the fjord's geography into gentle currents that barely stir the surface of the water and create the softest sighing sounds as they flow around and over the rocky outcroppings. The rocky platform where we stand extends perhaps 50 feet from the tree line to the water's edge, its surface worn smooth by countless seasons of weather. Patches of hardy alpine grasses find purchase in the cracks between rocks, their seed heads catching the last light and swaying gently in the barely perceptible breeze. Here and there, small pools of rainwater have collected in natural depressions in the rock, each one serving as a tiny mirror that reflects the fragments of sky and cloud. As we make our way carefully toward the water's edge, the granite beneath our feet shows the subtle marks of its ancient origins, striations and patterns that speak of unimaginable geological forces, of mountains being born and shaped over millions of years. Some sections of rock display a fine-grained texture smooth as glass, while others reveal a coarser pattern studded with crystals that sparkle faintly in the changing light. Each footstep brings a slightly different sensation, a new texture, a fresh connection to this timeless place. The very edge of the platform meets the water without any dramatic drop-off or barrier. The fjord is deep, incredibly deep, but its edges slope gently underwater, allowing us to see down through the clear water to where submerged rocks create shadowy shapes beneath the surface. Small fish occasionally dart between these underwater formations, their silver bodies catching brief flashes of light before disappearing again into the darker depths. The water temperature, when you dip a hand below the surface, is bracingly cold, but not shocking. The kind of cold that speaks of mountain snowmelt and underground springs, pure and clean and somehow enlivening. As evening continues to deepen around us, the quality of light begins its slow, magical transformation. The direct sunlight has long since disappeared behind the western rim of the fjord, but the sky above still holds the warm glow of late afternoon, creating that special golden hour light that photographers and artists dream of capturing. This gentle illumination filters down into the fjord from above, turning the water from its daytime blue-black to something softer, warmer, more mysterious. The mountain walls that rise on either side of the fjord reveal their character more clearly in this changing light. These are ancient formations, their faces showing the dramatic history written in stone. Vertical cliff sections that speak of glacial carving, gentler slopes covered in hardy vegetation, and dramatic overhangs that create deep shadows and hidden alcoves. Some cliff faces catch and hold the light, revealing subtle color variations in the rock, hints of rose and gold and deep gray blue that shift and change as the angle of illumination continues to evolve. Scattered across these seemingly impossible cliff faces, determined trees and shrubs have found footholds in cracks and ledges, creating vertical gardens that add touches of living green to the stark beauty of stone. A mountain ash here, its orange berries bright against gray granite. A cluster of birch there, their pale trunks creating delicate vertical lines against the massive horizontal sweep of the cliff face. Each plant represents decades or even centuries of patient growth, roots finding sustenance in the thinnest layers of soil accumulated in rocky crevices. The wildlife in places like this tends to be subtle, requiring patience and quiet observation to notice. A raven calls from somewhere high above, its voice echoing off the mountain walls in a series of diminishing echoes that seem to travel the entire length of the fjord before finally fading into silence. Somewhere in the forest behind us, a branch cracks softly, perhaps a deer moving carefully through the undergrowth, or simply a tree settling in the cooling air. These sounds don't disturb the peace. Instead, they enhance it, reminding us that we're visitors in a living landscape that continues its ancient rhythms whether we're present or not. As we settle ourselves comfortably on the sun-warm granite, choosing a spot where the rock forms a natural seat with a perfect view down the length of the fjord, the sky above begins its evening transformation in earnest. The blue of midday has already given way to softer tones, and now we can see the first hints of what promises to be an extraordinary night. High, wispy clouds stretch across the sky in delicate formations that seem to glow from within, their edges touched with the faintest suggestion of colors that don't yet have names. This is the kind of place where time seems to move differently, where the urgency of everyday life falls away completely, and you find yourself naturally settling into rhythms that are older and deeper than schedules and deadlines. Your breathing automatically slows and deepens in the clean mountain air. Your muscles relax against the solid support of ancient stone. Your mind, freed from its usual chatter and concerns, begins to expand and settle into a state of quiet awareness that matches the vast, patient presence of the landscape around you. The anticipation in the air is almost tangible now. There's something about the quality of the light, the behavior of the wind, the way the water seems to hold itself in perfect stillness that suggests this evening holds special possibilities. Local wisdom speaks of nights when the very sky comes alive with dancing colors, when the aurora borealis stretches its luminous fingers across the darkness in displays that can leave witnesses speechless with wonder. Tonight feels like such a night, as if responding to some ancient celestial cue. The first hint appears. It's so subtle you might question whether you've seen it at all. A faint luminescence that seems to breathe just above the horizon, pale as winter moonlight on snow. The shimmer appears and vanishes, appears again, like the shy emergence of a wild creature from the forest depths. Your breath catches in your throat, not from cold, but from the recognition that something extraordinary is beginning to unfold above this Norwegian wilderness. The green light starts as little more than a whisper of color, so delicate it could be mistaken for a trick of tired eyes. But there's an unmistakable quality to it, a otherworldly glow that no earthly light possesses. It pulses gently, growing slightly stronger, then retreating, as if testing the darkness to see if it's truly ready for what's to come. The aurora's first tentative dance steps are taking place in the theater of night sky, and you find yourself holding perfectly still, afraid that any sudden movement might startle this celestial performance back into hiding. The water of the fjord has become a mirror so flawless it seems to double the world. Each star reflects with pinpoint precision, creating the illusion that you're suspended between two identical skies. When that first green shimmer strengthens enough to cast its glow downward, it creates a second phantom aurora in the depths below, rippling only when a fish disturbs the surface with the gentlest of movements. The reflection transforms the fjord into something mystical, no longer just water, but a portal between earth and heaven, a looking glass that shows you glimpses of infinity. The light has texture, not smooth and even like artificial illumination, but organic and varied, with bright spots and dimmer areas, with edges that are sometimes sharp and sometimes soft, with movements that suggest wind patterns in the high atmosphere where this display is actually taking place. You find your sense of scale shifting as you watch. The aurora appears close enough to touch, yet you know it's dancing more than 60 miles above your head. It seems small enough to cup in your hands, yet you understand it stretches across hundreds of miles of sky. This paradox of perception adds to the dreamlike quality of the experience, the sense that normal rules of physics and perspective have been temporarily suspended in favor of something more mysterious and wonderful. The reflection in the fjord's still water creates its own magic, doubling every movement, every shift of light and shadow. When the aurora pulses brighter, both sky and water glow together in perfect synchronization. When it dims, both fade as one. Do you realize you're witnessing not just one light show, but two? The original performance high above, and its aquatic mirror image far below, separated by the thin space where you stand and breathe and wonder at the magnificent strangeness of this world. As minutes pass, though time seems to move differently here, measured not by clocks, but by the aurora's own rhythms, you notice your body settling into a state of peaceful attention. The initial excitement of seeing the first green shimmer has evolved into something deeper and more sustainable, a quiet wonder that asks nothing of you except presence. Your shoulders relax, Your breathing deepens. Your eyes adjust ever more completely to the darkness, revealing details that were invisible when you first arrived at this rocky shore. The aurora continues its subtle dance, never quite the same from moment to moment, yet maintaining its essential character. This is still the gentle beginning, you sense, the opening movement of what promises to be a much grander symphony of light. But there's perfection in this quieter phase too, a beauty and restraint, in the way the green luminescence holds itself back like a skilled performer who knows the value of building slowly toward crescendo. Around you, the Norwegian landscape settles deeper into its winter night stillness, patient as only wild places can be patient, eternal in its rhythms of dark and light, season and season, aurora and aurora across the centuries. You are a temporary visitor in this ancient dance, welcomed for this brief moment to witness something that continues, whether human eyes observe it or not, but somehow made more meaningful, more complete by your presence and attention here on the shores of this timeless fjord. The wind arrives not as interruption, but as invitation, carrying with it the stories of 1,000 miles of untouched wilderness. You feel its first tentative touch against your cheek, cool finger that have traced the edges of glaciers, swept across frozen tundra, and gathered the crystalline breath of the far north into their invisible arms. This is not the hurried wind of valleys and cities, but something older, more patient, speaking in a language that predates words. As it moves past you, the Arctic wind brings with it the faintest whisper of snow that has not yet fallen, the metallic scent of ice that has slept for centuries in places where no human foot has ever stepped. You inhale deeply, and the cold air fills your lungs with a clarity that seems to sharpen every sense, making the colors of the aurora above appear more vivid, the silence between its movements more profound. The wind carries no urgency, only the steady persistence of something that knows its purpose and moves according to rhythms far grander than any human schedule. Your clothing rustles softly in the gentle current, the fabric creating a quiet percussion that harmonizes with the wind's own subtle song. It's a sound like pages turning in an enormous book, written in a script of temperature and pressure, altitude and distance. The wind seems to recognize you as something temporary but worthy of acknowledgement, brushing past you with the same attention it gives to the ancient stones along the fjord's edge, the weathered pine trees that have stood sentinel here for decades. Around you, the landscape responds to this Arctic messenger with tiny adjustments. The snow shifts almost imperceptibly, creating new patterns in the drifts that line the shoreline. A few loose crystals lift and dance briefly in the air, before settling again in slightly different configurations. The wind moves through the sparse vegetation with a sound like gentle breathing, causing the hardy grasses that poke through the snow to nod in acknowledgement of its passage. The aurora above seems to pulse in response to the wind's presence, though you know this is merely the happy coincidence of two natural phenomena occurring simultaneously. Yet there's something magical in the synchronization, as if the wind carries electrical whispers from the magnetosphere down to Earth, translating the solar wind's cosmic energy into something your human senses can almost comprehend. The green curtains of light flutter and wave with renewed vitality, their movements now seeming to echo the rhythmic gusts that play across the fjord's surface. You notice how the wind affects the water differently than the land. Where it touches the fjord's dark surface, tiny wavelets appear and disappear, creating brief mirrors that catch fragments of aurora light and scatter them like handfuls of emerald coins tossed across black velvet. The reflection of the northern lights no longer holds steady but becomes something alive and dynamic, rippling with each gust, transforming the aurora's image into abstract art, painted in real time across the water's canvas. The temperature carries stories in its subtle variations. One moment the wind brings air that has traveled across open water, relatively warm and humid, carrying the mineral scent of deep fjord waters and the faint organic richness of sea life far below. Then it shifts, bringing a current that has swept down from the high peaks inland, sharp and thin, carrying the pure emptiness of altitude and the clean scent of snow that has never been touched by anything but starlight and time. Your face becomes a weather station, registering these minute changes in temperature and humidity. The skin on your cheeks tingles slightly as moisture in the air condenses into microscopic droplets, while your nose catches the subtle differences in each breath. Now the metallic brightness of glacier-fed streams, now the deeper, earthier undertones of forests sleeping beneath snow blankets, miles inland. The wind brings sound as well as scent and sensation. In its movement, you hear the distant voice of the wilderness speaking in frequencies that bypass your ears and resonate directly in your chest. There's the barely audible whistle of air moving around the contours of distant mountains, the soft percussion of snow being lifted and relocated grain by grain, the almost subsonic rumble of thermal currents rising and falling in the darkness beyond the horizon. Sometimes the wind falls to perfect stillness, creating moments of such profound quiet that you become aware of sounds you didn't notice before. The faint cracking of ice adjusting to temperature changes somewhere out on the fjord, the soft settling sounds of snow compressing under its own weight, the distant splash of something moving beneath the water's surface. These pauses make the wind's return even more noticeable, like a conversation resuming after a thoughtful silence. When the gusts return, they bring with them a sense of movement and journey that contrasts beautifully with your own stillness. You remain anchored to this one perfect vantage point, while the wind serves as your traveling companion, bringing you reports from places you'll never see. Arctic islands where polar bears leave tracks in pristine snow, ice fields that stretch beyond the horizon in crystalline perfection, remote valleys where the northern lights dance for audiences of caribou and Arctic foxes. The wind seems to have moods and intentions, though you know this is simply your human tendency to find personality in natural phenomena. Sometimes it moves with purposeful direction, flowing steadily from one compass point to another, as if on some urgent Arctic errand. Other times it seems playful, swirling and eddying around you in small whirlwinds that lift snow crystals in brief spiral dances before releasing them to settle back to Earth. You feel the wind's presence in layers, first against your exposed skin, then penetrating through your clothing to touch you with varying degrees of coolness. It moves around your body in complex patterns, creating microclimates in the space immediately surrounding you. The side of your body facing the fjord receives different currents than the side facing inland, and you become a living weather vane, registering these directional changes through subtle shifts in temperature and pressure. The aurora continues its celestial performance overhead, and you begin to notice how the wind seems to clear the air, making the lights appear even more vivid and defined. Microscopic ice crystals and moisture that might otherwise create a slight haze are swept away, leaving the atmosphere crystalline clear. The northern lights shine through this purified air with an intensity that makes their colors appear almost solid, as if you could reach up and touch the flowing curtains of green and violet radiance. Your breath mingles with the wind, creating small clouds of vapor that are immediately caught up in the larger atmospheric currents and carried away to become part of the Arctic wind's continuing journey. There's something profound about this exchange, you contributing your own small offering to the vast respiratory system of the planet, your human warmth becoming part of something infinitely larger and more enduring. The wind carries with it a sense of timelessness that seeps into your awareness. This same wind has blown across this fjord for thousands of years, carrying the same messages of ice and stone, aurora and starlight. Vikings felt this wind on their faces as they navigated these waters. Indigenous peoples felt it as they traveled these shores, reading its patterns like a map of the invisible world. Now it touches you with the same ancient persistence, making you part of a continuous human experience that spans centuries. Sometimes the wind brings unexpected gifts. The distant howl of an Arctic fox somewhere in the darkness, so faint you're not entirely sure you heard it. The creaking of ice far out on the fjord as it expands and contracts with temperature changes. The whispered rush of snow sliding from an overloaded pine branch somewhere in the forest behind you. These sounds arrive, wrapped in the wind, like messages in bottles. Brief communications from the wilderness that surrounds this luminous theater where you sit, witnessing the aurora's eternal performance. The interaction between wind and aurora creates an illusion of cause and effect, though you know the northern lights dance to electromagnetic rhythms far beyond Earth's atmospheric weather. Still, there's poetry in the coincidence, the way gusts seem to animate the celestial curtains, making them billow and flow like flags, celebrating some cosmic victory. The wind becomes the aurora's earthbound partner in this dance, providing terrestrial movement to complement the light's celestial choreography. As you sit in this convergence of elemental forces, earth and sky, wind and light, cold and warmth, stillness and motion, you feel yourself becoming part of the Arctic's vast respiratory system. Each breath you take connects you more deeply to this place, this moment, this ancient dialogue between planet and cosmos that continues with or without human witnesses, but somehow feels more complete with your conscious presence here, on the shores of this timeless fjord. where the wind carries stories older than memory, and the lights above write poetry across the darkness in languages that speak directly to something wordless and eternal within your quietly beating heart. The aurora begins to shift above you, those initial gentle waves transforming into something far more dramatic and alive. What started as subtle ribbons of green now unfurls into vast curtains that seem to drop from the very ceiling of the sky, each fold and pleat moving with an otherworldly grace that defies everything you thought you knew about the behavior of light. You find yourself tilting your head back further, your neck settling into the soft support of your jacket as you surrender completely to this celestial theater unfolding directly overhead. These aren't merely lights anymore. They've become something with substance and weight, hanging like enormous silk drapes that billow and sway in cosmic winds you cannot feel but can somehow sense. The green deepens and intensifies, shot through with threads of blue, so pure it makes your eyes water slightly, not from brightness, but from beauty. So concentrated it feels almost too much to absorb. You blink slowly, your eyelashes catching tiny droplets of moisture from the fjord air. Each blink like a camera shutter preserving another impossible moment of this display. The curtains begin to dance in earnest now, pleating and unpleating with movements that remind you of fabric caught in a gentle breeze, yet magnified beyond all earthly scale. You watch as one enormous fold gathers itself up toward the zenith, bunching like a theater curtain being drawn, only to cascade down again in smooth, flowing motions that seem choreographed by invisible hands. The light doesn't simply shine. It moves through space with intention, creating depths and shadows within its own luminescence that give it an almost three-dimensional quality against the star-scattered darkness. A soft gasp escapes your lips as veins of purple begin threading through the green, delicate as watercolor bleeding through wet paper, yet bright enough to illuminate the fjord walls in brief, magical flashes. The purple spreads and fades, like a slow heartbeat pulsing through the aurora's body. You realize you've unconsciously synchronized your own breathing to match this rhythm, drawing air deep into your lungs as the purple brightens, releasing it slowly as the color melts back into green. The temperature seems to drop another degree or two, and you burrow your hands deeper into your pockets, feeling the rough wool of your mittens against your palms. Your breath creates small clouds that dissipate quickly in the dry air. Each exhalation, a tiny offering to this frigid cathedral of light and stone. The cold feels clean here, pure in a way that city cold never does, carrying the scent of ancient ice and pine, resin down from the mountains that frame this fjord like silent sentinels. Now the aurora begins what can only be described as a true dance, the curtains swaying back and forth across the sky in movement so fluid and purposeful they seem almost alive. You find yourself searching for patterns in the motion. There, a slow sweep from east to west that takes nearly a full minute to complete, the entire display shifting like kelp in an underwater current. Then a sudden ripple runs through the lights, a wave of brightness that travels the length of the aurora in just seconds, followed by a gentle settling back into those hypnotic, swaying rhythms. The sound of the water lapping against the rocky shore below provides a quiet percussion to this silent symphony of light. Each small wave carries with it the faint tinkling of ice crystals, a delicate chiming that seems to complement the aurora's movements perfectly. You notice how the lights reflect in the dark surface of the fjord, creating a second, inverted performance that wavers and shifts with every ripple in the water. It's as if you're suspended between two skies, one solid and eternal above, one liquid and ever-changing below. Your eyes begin to adjust further to the darkness, and you start noticing details in the landscape that were invisible just minutes ago. The cliff faces across the fjord reveal themselves in subtle gradations of gray and black, their surfaces carved with the patient work of millennia of ice and wind. Snow clings to ledges and crevices, small patches of white that seem to glow faintly in the aurora's reflected light. A few hardy shrubs, bare now in the depth of winter, create delicate traceries against the stone, their branches reaching toward the dancing lights as if in supplication. The aurora's dance grows more complex, the curtains beginning to twist and spiral in ways that challenge your understanding of how light should behave. One section develops a slow corkscrew motion, rotating around an invisible axis while maintaining its flowing, fabric-like quality. You watch, mesmerized, as this spiraling column of light stretches and contracts like a living thing, sometimes reaching down toward the fjord as if trying to touch the water's surface. Other times, recoiling back up toward the stars in graceful, undulating motions. Pink begins to bloom along the edges of the green curtains, a soft rose color that reminds you of the inside of a seashell. This pink doesn't pulse like the purple did. Instead, it grows and fades gradually, like watercolor paint spreading through wet paper, creating gradients so subtle and beautiful they make your chest tighten with emotion. The combination of green, blue, purple, and pink creates an otherworldly palette that no earthly artist could replicate. Colors that seem to exist only in this thin atmosphere where solar particles meet magnetic fields in their ancient, eternal dance. Your feet are beginning to feel the cold through your boots. But somehow this only adds to the experience, rather than detracting from it. The contrast between the chill seeping up from the frozen ground and the warmth generated by your body's quiet circulation creates a heightened awareness of your physical presence in this moment. You shift your weight slightly, feeling the crunch of frost-brittle grass beneath your soles, grounding yourself in this specific point on Earth, while your consciousness soars with the lights overhead. The curtains begin to multiply. What started as perhaps 3 or 4 distinct sections, now expanding into dozens of luminous panels that hang across the entire dome of the sky. Each one moves independently, yet in harmony with the others, creating a complex symphony of motion that's impossible to follow completely. Your eyes dart from one section to another, trying to take it all in, but eventually you give up the effort and simply let the entire display wash over you like music made visible. a meteor streaks through the aurora. A brief silver scratch across the curtains of light that's there and gone in the space of a heartbeat. The timing feels impossibly perfect, as if the universe has added a single bright note to complement this already overwhelming composition. You find yourself smiling in the darkness, an expression of pure wonder that feels as natural and involuntary as breathing. When was the last time something left you this speechless, this grateful, simply to exist in the same moment and place as such beauty? The wind picks up slightly, carrying with it the faint sound of ice shifting somewhere in the distance, perhaps a glacier calving into the sea miles away, or simply the thermal expansion and contraction of the fjord's frozen edges adjusting to the night's deepening cold. These subtle sounds only enhance the aurora's silent performance, providing an audio landscape that feels perfectly matched to the visual feast unfolding above. Your ears, like your eyes, seem more sensitive here, attuned to frequencies and subtleties that usually escape notice in the busier world you've temporarily left behind. The dance reaches what feels like a crescendo as all the curtains begin moving in a synchronized wave motion, rippling from north to south in a pattern so regular and beautiful it brings tears to your eyes. The tears freeze almost immediately on your cheeks, tiny crystals that catch and scatter the aurora's light in miniature rainbows. You don't wipe them away. They feel like a baptism, a blessing from this holy place that marks you as a witness to something far greater than yourself. These frozen tears become part of the experience, tiny prisms that add their own small magic to an already magical night. Your breathing has become so slow and deep that each inhale seems to draw in, not just air, but peace itself, while each exhale releases tensions and worries you didn't even realize you were carrying. The rhythm of breath, the rhythm of waves, the rhythm of light, all synchronizing into a meditation so profound it requires no conscious effort, no technique beyond simple presence and openness to what this moment offers without reservation or explanation. Here beneath the dancing curtains, where time moves differently and wonder feels as natural and necessary as gravity itself, the stillness of the fjord's surface transforms into something almost mystical as the aurora's glow begins to cast its ethereal light downward, creating a second sky that exists only in the mirror of dark water below. You find yourself drawn toward the water's edge, where smooth stones worn by countless tides create a natural pathway down to where the fjord meets the shore. Each step brings you closer to this liquid mirror, and with each step, the reflection of the northern lights becomes more vivid, more immediate, until you're standing at the very boundary between two worlds of light. The water here moves with such subtle gentleness that it barely qualifies as movement at all, just the faintest suggestion of currents, the most delicate breathing of the fjord's surface as it responds to some distant rhythm known only to itself. When you settle onto a large flat boulder that juts into the water like nature's own meditation seat, you discover that your position allows you to see both the aurora dancing overhead and its perfect twin performing the same celestial ballet in the depths below. There's something profoundly settling about watching light behave this way, doubling itself without losing any of its mystery or power. The green ribbons that sweep across the star-filled sky find their exact counterparts in the fjord's dark mirror. But these reflected lights seem to possess their own unique quality, softer somehow, more intimate, as if the water has filtered the aurora's energy through something ancient and knowing. You notice how the reflection doesn't simply copy the lights above, but seems to complete them, creating a full circle of illumination that encompasses both heaven and earth. The boulder beneath you holds the day's warmth in its sun-weathered surface, a gentle heat that seeps through your clothing and reminds your muscles to release whatever tension they've been holding. Your hands rest naturally on the stone's smooth surface, fingertips tracing the subtle patterns carved by decades of weather and water. The texture tells stories, tiny valleys where rain has gathered, microscopic gardens where lichen has taken hold, creating a landscape in miniature that mirrors the vast fjord stretching out before you. As you sit in this perfect stillness, your breathing naturally synchronizes with the barely perceptible rhythm of the water's surface. Each inhalation seems to draw in not just the crisp mountain air, but something of the aurora's luminescence itself, filling your lungs with coolness that carries hints of snow from distant peaks and the clean scent of water that has traveled through pristine landscapes for countless miles. The exhalation releases more than just breath. It lets go of the day's complexities, the mind's constant cataloging and organizing, leaving space for this moment's particular kind of awareness. The reflected aurora shifts and flows in the water with dreamlike fluidity, sometimes perfectly mirroring the skybound lights and sometimes creating its own variations as tiny ripples add their influence to the display. You watch as a particularly vibrant ribbon of green light stretches across both sky and water, creating an unbroken bridge of luminescence that seems to connect all the scattered elements of this place into one cohesive whole. The reflection wavers slightly, not enough to distort, but just enough to remind you that you're witnessing something alive, something responsive to forces both seen and unseen. From your position at the water's edge, you become aware of sounds that were hidden when you were further from the fjord's surface. There's the gentlest possible lapping of water against stone, a sound so soft it's almost more felt than heard, like the fjord's own breathing made audible. Occasionally, a fish rises somewhere in the distance, creating concentric circles that catch and scatter the aurora's reflection in ever-widening rings of broken light before smoothing back into perfect stillness. The temperature here feels perfectly balanced between the coolness rising from the water and the residual warmth held in the surrounding stones. Your skin registers this subtle interplay of temperatures as a kind of comfort that requires no adjustment, no shifting or rearranging. The mountain's presence enfolds you, not with urgency, but with the profound stillness that comes only from immense age, from stone that has learned patience through millennia of storms weathered, seasons witnessed, auroras observed in their celestial dance. The silence here possesses weight and texture, different from the gentle quiet of the water's edge below. This is the silence of altitude, of spaces where wind sculpts snow into curves that mirror the aurora's flowing forms, where your own breathing becomes audible in the crystalline air, each exhale creating small clouds that dissipate like whispered secrets into the vast openness. The mountain does not speak in the way of rushing water or rustling leaves, but its presence communicates through the solid reality of stone beneath your hands, the way shadows pool in crevices carved by countless freeze and thaw cycles, the manner in which snow clings to ledges in patterns that suggest both randomness and ancient design. Above, the northern lights continue their celestial choreography, but from this elevated vantage point, they seem both more distant and more immediate. Distant because you now share something of the mountain's perspective, viewing the lights from a place that itself reaches toward the sky. Yet immediate because the thin air seems to bring you closer to their ethereal dance. Green curtains sweep across the darkness with movements that echo the mountain's own patient rhythms, slow and considered, each shift and shimmer measured against geological time, rather than the quick pulse of human moments. You settle against a broad ledge, carved smooth by wind and weather, the stone cold but somehow comforting beneath you, solid in a way that speaks of permanence beyond the temporary warmth of your body. The rock holds the accumulated quiet of centuries, and as you lean back against its weathered surface, you begin to sense the mountain's particular way of experiencing time. Minutes flow like decades here, each moment expanded and deepened by the vast perspective that comes with height and age. The aurora's dance overhead unfolds not as rapid entertainment, but as a slow meditation. Each color shift and luminous wave, something to be contemplated rather than merely observed. From this perch among the mountain's middle slopes, the world below reveals new patterns and relationships. The fjord stretches away in both directions, its dark water holding reflections that seem smaller now, more delicate, like scattered jewels, rather than the encompassing mirror you experienced at water level. Villages appear as tiny clusters of golden light, their warmth a counterpoint to the cool silver and green that dominates the night sky. Roads wind through valleys like faint threads, connecting these human settlements in a web of movement and purpose that seems both significant and impossibly small when viewed from the mountain's elevated perspective. The wind here carries stories written in temperature and scent. The sharp cleanness of snow that has never known footprints, the mineral tang of exposed granite, the thin sweetness of air that has traveled vast distances over ice and stone before reaching your lungs. Each breath draws in not just oxygen, but the essence of space itself, the particular flavor of altitude that makes you aware of your own small, warm presence against this immense and patient backdrop. Your hands, tucked warm within gloves, rest against stone, whose surface tells stories through touch. Smooth where ice has polished it, rough where fractures have opened along crystal boundaries, textured with a lichen that grows in slow motion across decades. The aurora shifts overhead, and from this mountain perspective, its movements seem to correspond to rhythms deeper than those visible from sea level. Here you begin to sense connections between the light's dance and the mountain's own slow breathing. The way stone expands and contracts through temperature changes. The way snow settles and shifts in responses to gravity and wind. The way the entire massive structure participates in cycles that spans seasons and centuries. The northern lights become not just a sky phenomenon, but part of a conversation between earth and atmosphere, between the solid reality of ancient stone and the ethereal dance of charged particles painting themselves across the darkness. Your position on this rocky perch allows you to feel held rather than exposed, cradled in a natural chair carved by geological processes into something remarkably suited for human contemplation. The ledge curves slightly, providing support for your back while offering an unobstructed view of both sky and fjord, as if the mountain had always intended this spot for moments exactly like this one. Snow collects in small drifts around you, not cold enough to be uncomfortable, but present enough to remind you of winter's quiet power, of the season's ability to simplify landscapes into essential elements: stone, snow, water, light. The silence deepens around you, not because sounds disappear, but because the mountain's presence teaches a different way of listening. Each small noise, the distant call of a night bird, the soft whisper of snow shifting in the wind, the barely audible crack of stone responding to temperature, becomes magnified and significant within this vast quiet. These sounds don't disturb the silence, but rather define it. The way individual brushstrokes help define the white spaces in a painting. The aurora continues its display above, its colors seeming richer and more nuanced when viewed through air, made thin and pure by altitude. From this elevated sanctuary, time seems to flow differently, each moment stretched and examined through the mountain's patient lens. The northern lights dance slows to match this expanded temporality, each wave of color given space to develop and fade without the hurry that characterizes lower elevations. Your own breathing naturally adjusts to this rhythm, becoming deeper and more measured, your heartbeat slowing to synchronize with the mountain's imperceptible pulse. Here, surrounded by stone that has witnessed the birth and death of glaciers, the rise and fall of sea levels, the gradual dance of continents themselves, your own small concerns and hurries seem not diminished, but rather placed in a context that allows them to find their proper proportions. The cold air carries no urgency, no demand for quick movement or immediate response. Instead, it invites the kind of stillness that comes from profound safety, the knowledge that this mountain has weathered far greater storms than any you might face, has stood firm through changes that dwarf human experience, has maintained its essential character through transformations that reduce your temporary worries to the significance of snowflakes, each one unique and beautiful, and ultimately part of something much larger than itself. As you rest here in the mountain's silent embrace, the aurora overhead seems to respond to your elevated presence, its lights reaching lower, coming closer, as if acknowledging the effort it took to climb this far toward their celestial realm. The display becomes more intimate from this vantage point, less like a distant performance and more like a nearby conversation the kind of quiet exchange that happens between old friends who need few words to communicate deep understanding. The mountain beneath you participates in this conversation through its steadfast presence, its willingness to serve as a platform for this meeting between human consciousness and cosmic display. The stone's solid reality grounds you, while the light's ethereal dance lifts your awareness, creating a perfect balance between earth and sky, between the known and the mysterious, between the ancient and the immediate. Your position here on this natural throne, carved from living rock, allows you to experience yourself as part of this larger dialogue, neither separate from the mountain's patient strength, nor untouched by the aurora's flowing beauty, but held in the space between them, where wonder becomes a form of worship and stillness transforms into its own kind of motion. And from this threshold where stone meets sky, where your breath mingles with the mountain's ancient exhalations, you begin to notice that what you initially perceived as green in the aurora's vast display is revealing itself to be something far more intricate, far more nuanced than any single word could contain. The dominant band of luminescence that stretches across the fjord like a bridge built from light itself shifts through shades that seem to exist beyond the normal spectrum of earthly experience, not simply emerald or jade or forest green, but something that suggests the color of deep ocean currents viewed from impossible depths. The hue of new leaves if they could somehow absorb starlight instead of sunlight. The shade of dreams if dreams themselves could cast reflections. Your eyes, now fully adjusted to this interplay between darkness and radiance, catch subtleties that reveal themselves only to patient observation. Within what appeared to be a uniform bands of color, you discover layers upon layers of variation, threads of silver white that pulse through the green like veins of precious metal through living stone, hints of blue so pale they seem more like suggestions than actual color, whispers of yellow that flicker at the edges of each undulating wave of light. The aurora moves with a rhythm that reminds you of breathing, expanding and contracting across the star-scattered canvas above. And with each cycle, new colors emerge from the depths of the display, like shy creatures venturing into moonlight. The cold air carries a crystalline quality that seems to sharpen not just your vision, but your very capacity for wonder. Each breath you draw feels charged with the same energy that paints these impossible colors across the Norwegian sky. And you sense that the mountain beneath you, this patient giant of granite and time, has witnessed countless such displays throughout centuries of winter nights. There's something profound in being held by stone that has observed this celestial dance for longer than human memory can reach. Something that adds weight and meaning to the ephemeral beauty streaming overhead. Now a new color begins to manifest at the northern edge of the display. A rose pink so delicate it seems to blush into existence rather than simply appear. This soft addition transforms the entire composition, creating harmonies of color that shift the mood of the night from mysterious to something approaching tender. The pink doesn't assert itself boldly, but rather suffuses the green bands like watercolor bleeding through wet paper. creating gradients and transitions that seem to breathe with their own gentle life. You find yourself leaning back slightly against the natural backrest formed by the rock outcropping, allowing your shoulders to release tension you didn't realize you were carrying. From this more relaxed position, the aurora fills even more of your visual field, wrapping around the edges of your peripheral vision until you feel less like an observer and more like someone dwelling within the phenomenon itself. The sensation is both grounding and liberating, grounded by the solid reality of stone supporting your body, liberated by the way the lights seem to lift your consciousness into spaces where ordinary concerns cannot follow. The interplay of colors above the fjord continues to evolve, and now you notice violet beginning to thread its way through the display like royal silk woven into common cloth. This purple carries depth and richness that suggests twilight skies and great dark seas, adding a regal quality to the aurora's flowing performance. Where the violet meets the green, entirely new colors emerge, shades that exist in the spaces between named hues, colors that remind you why ancient peoples saw gods and spirits dancing in these lights. Your hands, resting on the smooth stone beside your legs, register the mountain's steady coolness even through your gloves. This tactile anchor keeps you present in your physical experience, even as the visual spectacle above invites your awareness to expand and soar. The contrast creates a perfect balance, your body held by Earth's patient strength, while your imagination takes flight with lights that seem to originate from dreams themselves. As you continue to watch, the aurora begins to pulse with what appears to be a subtle rhythm, and you realize that this rhythm seems to correspond with something deep within your own chest, not quite matching your heartbeat, but harmonizing with it in a way that creates a sense of attunement, of belonging to this moment and this place. The colors intensify with each pulse, revealing new depths and variations that make you understand why no photograph could ever capture what you're witnessing now. Orange begins to kindle at the lower edges of the display, warm and rich like embers glowing in a perfect hearth. This addition of warmth to the cooler palette creates a visual music that seems to play across the sky in slow, majestic movements. The orange doesn't simply exist alongside the other colors, but dances with them, creating moments where gold appears in the intersections, where coral pink blooms at the boundaries, where amber light pools in the gentler curves of the aurora's flowing form. Below you, the fjord's dark water catches and holds reflections of all these colors, creating a second aurora that shimmers with the water's movement. This reflected display adds another dimension to your experience, the sense of being suspended between two light shows, one celestial and infinite, one aquatic and immediate. The water's reflection breaks and reforms with each small current and breeze, creating a more fluid, more impressionistic version of the sky's precise beauty. Now the entire display begins to shift into what feels like a crescendo of color and movement. Ribbons of light stretch and curve across the full width of the sky, creating shapes that remind you of vast curtains blown by stellar winds, of cosmic flowers blooming in slow motion, of ancient symbols written in a language of pure luminescence. The colors continue to deepen and multiply. You catch glimpses of turquoise so bright it seems electric, flashes of magenta that pulse like cosmic heartbeats, traces of gold that seem to carry the warmth of distant suns. Your breathing has synchronized with the aurora's rhythm without any conscious effort on your part. Each inhalation seems to draw in some essence of the display itself, while each exhalation releases any remaining tension or urgency from your system. You feel perfectly calibrated to this moment, perfectly positioned to receive whatever gifts this night sky wants to offer. The colors continue to evolve and transform, creating combinations that seem to exist outside normal experience. Blues that contain hints of infinity, greens that suggest depths beyond measurement, purples that carry the weight of cosmic mystery. You realize that you're witnessing something that connects you, not just to this particular place and moment, but to every human being who has ever stood beneath, dancing lights, and felt their perspective shift, their sense of possibility expand, their connection to the universe deepen into something approaching reverence. As this understanding settles into your awareness, like warmth spreading through your chest, the aurora seems to respond by intensifying once more, painting the Norwegian night with colors that exist beyond the boundaries of imagination, beyond the limits of description, beyond anything except the pure, immediate wonder of witnessing beauty that transforms the very act of seeing into a form of gratitude. This gratitude flows through you like a gentle current, carrying with it the recognition that you have become part of something much larger than yourself, a witness to the ancient rhythms that govern the northern wilderness. The aurora continues its eternal dance above the fjord, but now you begin to perceive something deeper, the underlying pulse that drives each movement, each shift of color, each cascade of light across the star-filled canvas of the Norwegian night. The rhythm reveals itself slowly, like a heartbeat felt through your palms when you press them against your chest. In the darkness, the aurora's dance creates windows in the luminous veil, brief moments when the green and blue radiance pulls apart like curtains being drawn. And through these openings, the universe displays its deeper mysteries. You notice how each star has its own distinct character. Some pulse with a steady white fire, others carry the faintest hint of blue or gold in their light. There's one particular star, positioned almost directly overhead, that seems to flicker with unusual intensity, as if it's trying to communicate across the impossible distance. Between the waves of aurora light, this star grows brighter, more insistent, until you find yourself focusing entirely on its steady beacon, while the northern lights ebb and flow around it like a cosmic tide. The fjord below has grown so still that its surface acts like a perfect mirror, doubling the entire celestial display. When you look down toward the water, you see the stars reflected with such precision that for a moment you lose track of which direction is up and which is down. The reflected aurora seems just as real, just as vibrant as the one above, creating the sensation that you're suspended in the middle of a sphere of light and darkness, with stars surrounding you on all sides. A gentle breeze stirs across the mountain, carrying with it the clean scent of snow and stone, and something else, perhaps the mineral smell of the ancient rocks that form these peaks, worn smooth by countless centuries of wind and weather. This small movement of air brushes across your face with a touch so light it might be imagined, yet it's enough to remind you of your physical presence in this vast landscape, grounding you in the immediate reality of this Norwegian mountainside, while your vision remains lost in cosmic distances. The rhythm of the aurora continues its slow breathing pattern, but now you become aware of an even deeper rhythm beneath it, something that seems to pulse with the heartbeat of the earth itself. Perhaps it's your own pulse you're sensing, synchronized now with the turning of the planet, the circulation of magnetic fields, the ancient dance between solar wind and atmospheric gases. This deeper rhythm feels like the slow circulation of ocean currents, the gradual shift of continental plates, the patient breathing of geological time. As another wave of green light sweeps overhead, you notice how the intensity varies across different parts of the display. Near the horizon, the colors appear softer, more diffused, bleeding gently into the darkness like watercolors on wet paper. But directly above, the lights seem more concentrated, more purposeful, creating distinct bands and spirals that shift and morph with deliberate precision. It's as if you're seeing the aurora from multiple distances, simultaneously. The soft, atmospheric glow from far away, and the sharp, immediate brilliance from up close. Between these varying intensities of light, the stars continue their patient vigil. You begin to recognize patterns, not the formal constellations you might remember from books, but more personal arrangements that seem to emerge from this particular viewing angle. 3 stars form a gentle triangle near the western horizon. A curved line of 5 bright points creates an arc that mirrors the shape of the fjord below. These stellar arrangements feel like a secret language written across the sky, comprehensible only from this exact spot on this specific night. The temperature around you feels perfectly calibrated for comfort, cool enough to keep you alert and present, but not so cold as to cause distraction. Your breath creates small puffs of vapor that quickly dissipate in the dry mountain air, each exhalation a tiny cloud that catches the faintest reflection of the aurora's glow before vanishing into the darkness. There's something deeply satisfying about this visible proof of your breathing, this small sign of life and warmth in the vast, cold landscape. As you continue watching, the spaces between the light waves begin to feel as important as the lights themselves. These dark intervals aren't empty. They're full of potential, pregnant with the promise of the next surge of radiance. During these quiet moments, when the aurora dims to its faintest whisper, the stars shine with maximum intensity, as if the cosmos is taking turns displaying its different forms of beauty. First, the earthly spectacle of magnetic fields made visible, then the deeper mystery of nuclear fires burning across interstellar distances. The the sound environment has settled into its own gentle rhythm. The occasional whisper of wind across stone, the distant, almost subliminal sound of water moving far below in the fjord. Not quite audible, but somehow sensed, like the pulse of blood through your own veins. Even your clothing makes the softest rustle as you shift slightly, finding the most comfortable position to continue your skyward vigil. These small sounds don't disturb the silence, but rather define it, creating an acoustic frame that makes the quiet more profound. A new pattern begins to emerge in the aurora's movement. Spirals that seem to rotate slowly around invisible centers, creating the impression of cosmic whirlpools in the upper atmosphere. As these spirals turn, they reveal and conceal different sections of the star field, like a slowly rotating kaleidoscope with the night sky as its source material. One particularly bright star appears and disappears behind these turning curtains of light, playing an unhurried game of celestial hide-and-seek that could continue for hours without losing its fascination. Your perception of time has shifted completely. Minutes might be passing, or hours. There's no way to tell, and no need to know. The rotation of these aurora spirals operates on its own schedule, independent of human concerns about duration or progress. This is time as the universe experiences it, patient, cyclical, measured not in seconds or minutes, but in the gradual evolution of magnetic fields, the slow dance of charged particles, the ancient conversation between solar wind and planetary atmosphere. The reflection in the fjord continues to fascinate. Sometimes the water's surface is so perfectly still that the reflected aurora appears absolutely identical to the original, creating a complete sphere of light with you positioned at its center. But occasionally, the gentlest movement of water creates tiny ripples that fragment the reflection, turning the mirrored lights into thousands of small dancing flames scattered across the dark surface. These fragmented reflections have their own beauty, more intimate, more playful than the majestic original overhead. You become aware of your own heartbeat, not as an intrusion into this peaceful scene, but as another layer of rhythm joining the cosmic symphony. Your pulse seems to have synchronized with the slowest fluctuations of the aurora, creating a sense of biological participation in the celestial display. Each heartbeat is a small acknowledgement of your presence in this vast system of energies, a reminder that you're not just observing this phenomenon, but participating in it, adding your own small note to the universal composition. This participation feels almost cellular now, as if the minerals in your bones are responding to some ancient magnetic call from the earth itself. The fjord cradles you in its steep-walled sanctuary, and you begin to notice how the water far below seems to hold fragments of the aurora's glow, creating a second sky beneath the first. The reflection isn't perfect. It shimmers and breaks apart with each small wave, creating an entirely different kind of beauty, more intimate somehow than the pristine display overhead. The rocky ledge where you rest has retained just enough warmth from the day's distant sun to keep the cold at bay, though the stone feels solid and eternal beneath you. Your fingers trace the rough granite surface, feeling the tiny crystals that catch what little light filters down from above. There's something profoundly grounding about this texture, the way each small ridge and depression tells a story of millennia, of ice and weather and time, moving so slowly that your entire life would be merely a blink in the mountain's memory. The air carries scents that seem to belong to no other place on earth. The clean, almost metallic smell of snow on stone, mixed with something deeper and more primal. Like the breath of the earth itself, pine trees cling to impossible slopes around the fjord's rim, and their resinous fragrance drifts down in subtle waves, adding a touch of warmth to the crystalline atmosphere. Each inhalation brings this complex bouquet deeper into your lungs, and you find yourself breathing more slowly, more deliberately, as if trying to memorize the very essence of this place through scent alone. The aurora continues its patient dance, but from this vantage point within the fjord's embrace, you're seeing it from an entirely new perspective. The steep walls create a natural frame, turning the sky into a vast canvas stretched between the mountain peaks. The lights seem more concentrated here, more focused, as if the fjord itself is acting like a lens, gathering and intensifying the celestial display just for you. Water sounds rise from the fjord's depths, not the crash of ocean waves, but something gentler and more mysterious. The occasional lap of water against stone echoes off the surrounding cliffs, creating a soft percussion that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Sometimes you hear what might be ice shifting far below, tiny crystalline chimes that speak of winter's patient artistry. These sounds don't intrude upon the silence so much as they define it, giving shape and texture to the quiet that surrounds you. Your body has found a natural position against the stone, and you notice how perfectly still you've become without any conscious effort. It's as if the fjord's ancient patience has seeped into your muscles, your breath, your very thoughts. Time moves differently here, not faster or slower, but with a quality that makes the distinction meaningless. Minutes might be passing, or hours, and it doesn't matter because each moment contains everything it needs to contain, complete and sufficient unto itself. The cold has a different quality within the fjord's walls, rather than the sharp bite of wind-driven chill. This is a clean, still coldness that seems to preserve rather than threaten. Your breath creates small clouds that dissipate quickly in the dry air, and you can feel the tips of your fingers and nose growing pink with the temperature. But it's a pleasant sensation, one that makes you more aware of the warmth that radiates from your core. Your body has become a small furnace in this vast, cool cathedral, and the contrast makes you acutely conscious of being alive, of being a warm-blooded creature in this mineral world. The fjord walls themselves seem to breathe with you, their massive presence somehow comforting rather than overwhelming. These are not harsh, jagged peaks, but slopes worn smooth by eons of ice and weather, their surfaces gentle despite their immense scale. In daylight, they might show bands of different colored stone, geological stories written in rock, but now they exist as vast, curved shadows that define the boundaries of your world without confining it. Above, the aurora has begun what looks like a slow waltz. Sheets of green light moving in graceful arcs that seem choreographed by some cosmic intelligence. The colors deepen as you watch, shifting through shades that have no names in any human language. Greens that contain hints of gold, blues that border on violet, and occasionally, just at the edge of perception, touches of rose and amber that appear and vanish like half-remembered dreams. Each color seems to resonate at a different frequency, and you imagine you can almost hear them as musical notes, creating harmonies that exist just beyond the range of human hearing. The stone beneath you has begun to feel less like a hard surface and more like a natural extension of your own body. You found the exact position where every part of you is supported, where no muscle needs to work to keep you upright, where you can simply exist in perfect equilibrium with the mountain itself. It's as if the granite has been waiting for centuries for someone to rest in exactly this spot, shaped by weather and time into a natural throne, overlooking the fjord's dark mirror. Your awareness has expanded to encompass the entire fjord system, the water far below, the climbing walls that surround you, the rim of the world where stone meets sky, and the vast atmospheric theater where the aurora performs its nightly ritual. And so, the story gently fades, like stars at dawn. Sleep well, dear listener. I'll be here whenever you need